Welcome to Thursday Newsday, your #1 resource for the entire week's worth of VR news. So, the past few weeks have actually ended up being pretty wild in the world of VR. The PlayStation VR 2 is now officially working with SteamVR. Apple makes some big cuts on the Vision Pro. We got some interesting Quest updates with V55 and 6 that are more than welcome. But of course, the big news, finally, one of the biggest and most popular games in the world is officially coming to VR, and it's kind of a big deal. We got all that and so much more. Let's just get right into the news. So let's start this one off with something pretty wild that I did not expect to see. I've always been obsessed with brain-computer interfaces and their applications for VR. I mean, if you watch 2 seconds of Sword Art Online, I think you get it. And well, in a partnership between French startup Wisear and Pico, a new type of control has just entered the rink in the form of neural earbuds. So these aren't the typical BCIs where you think and things happen. Instead, Wisear detects incredibly subtle facial muscle movements that you can then assign to certain control inputs. In the demo video, the user clenches their jaw just slightly to activate pass-through, for example. Or you can shift your cheek slightly to swipe on a TikTok in VR, like using a walkie-talkie with your face without pressing anything, or muting and unmuting using a facial gesture. And it all looks pretty interesting. There's no word currently on availability or price or even direct compatibility with other headsets than Pico, but they are starting demos soon, so maybe we'll see. Moving on, Apple's Vision Pro obviously made a pretty massive splash in the entire VR market last month when it was officially announced. Set to launch sometime next year for the grand price of $3,500. However, despite the price, a lot of people, including me, are still interested in getting one. Some of the specs on board just aren't seen anywhere else. But actually getting one may be significantly harder than just placing a pre-order and crying for your wallet. So initially, it was reported that Apple would be aiming to manufacture and ship anywhere from 1 to 5 million headsets within its first year, which checks out for a first-generation device. It's a pretty modest number. However, this is likely not going to be the case at all. According to more recent supply chain reports, apparently the new sales target isn't so much based on how many units Apple thinks they're going to be able to sell. It's more about how many they think they're going to be able to make. And new estimates state that Apple is only going to be shipping around 150,000 units within its first year, which is kinda crazy. But really, that incredibly decreased amount is all due to the growing pains of the supply chain, as these displays that the Vision Pro are using are really low yield, meaning that a lot of them that get manufactured will have defects or just don't make it into a final product. And this is just a weird situation. The headset made such a huge splash, and I'm sure lots of people are down to get one, as I said, including myself. But I honestly don't even know if I'm gonna be able to get one because of the insane demand and insanely limited supply. But I did find it interesting that despite this, analysts still forecast that the Vision Pro within 5 years will be shipping more, if not the same amount of units as the MacBook Pro, which is around 12 million plus. Well, that's pretty bold, but I guess we'll have to see. But now onto the Meta and Quest news. The Quest 2 and Pro are about to look quite a bit better in headset. Apps from V55 on will now have an optional feature called Super Resolution that improves how just about everything looks in headset, as long as the developers enable it, of course. There are some downsides. But basically, it's an upscaling and sharpening algorithm that sharpens things without introducing more nasty aliasing or blur. And if you've been using Virtual Desktop for a while, you already know what this is, because it's the exact same Snapdragon Super Resolution that was updated on that app a while ago. Also, some other updates in the upcoming V56 that I've been trying out on PTC. The swipe keyboard is really awesome for direct touch. It's probably one of my favorite UI updates in a long time, and a new global local dimming for Quest Pro, which works great. But now we can finally talk about the big news. And I know this statement is maybe overused, but this honestly really could be one of the biggest things that's ever happened to VR, especially over the past couple of years. So, Roblox, one of the most popular games of all time, with a ridiculously large player base of over 200 million active users, has just been announced to be officially coming to Quest. Now, Roblox has actually had VR support for quite a while, but it was only PC, and the last time I tried it a while ago, it really wasn't the greatest to say the least. But this is all about to change as all Roblox VR support has recently been unified with OpenXR, allowing for easy compatibility and usage with any VR headset basically, which is going to make Quest support significantly better. And well, I have a lot of thoughts on this whole thing. For one, it makes a lot more sense now why Meta just announced they were reducing the minimum age requirement to use a Quest just a few weeks ago from 13 to 10 with the usage of a parental account. There's just no denying that a large portion of Roblox's user base is very young, and this undoubtedly will bring a lot of kids into VR, which is a whole topic that we'll get back to in just a second. My other thoughts are that this is an almost unquantifiably big deal for VR in general. Not only will Roblox coming to Quest officially inevitably bring possibly millions of new VR users into the ecosystem, not only buying headsets, but also buying other software as well, but this whole thing is what I call a legitimate legitimizer. Just like how Mark Zuckerberg said that Apple, the world's most valuable tech company, legitimized the VR industry by entering it, well, the biggest game in the world coming to the biggest headset in the world does a lot of the same. And it's a signal to studios around the world that maybe, just maybe, VR is a segment worth investing development time into. A lot of companies just follow what the big guys do. Now, what this means for apps like Rec Room, I don't know yet, but Rec Room, for example, has existed and thrived as a competitor to Roblox for years now on multiple storefronts, so I don't really see anything changing there. Now, regarding kids in VR, well, let me bring my opinion in. This move is probably bigger for Quest 2 and 3 sales this Christmas than any other game possibly coming to VR. Maybe except for if there was a Fortnite announcement or something. Put simply, this is going to sell a lot of headsets, and the primary demographic of those new headset owners will likely be a lot of kids. Now, that topic in itself is pretty controversial in the VR community, but beyond my previously stated concerns on various studies on VR's effects on developing eyes and motor skills of children that are mostly unproven anyways, I do think that this is a great thing for VR. And it makes me a little sad that the immediate reaction I saw was something along the lines of, oh great, more kids in VR. Because while I do get it, I'm just gonna give a little anecdote. A few weeks ago, I asked my little siblings what games they've been into, and the only answer for that was Roblox. It's their game. It's the game that they enjoy. And that's the same story for millions of kids. It's really hard for me to not be excited that millions of children around the world are going to experience VR in the same way that I experienced and fell in love with things like Halo 3 or Modern Warfare 2 matchmaking or RuneScape, because I know what those things mean to me now. And today, I love VR's potential so much, along with the things I experienced as a kid, that I can say, yeah, I'm just excited for a whole new generation to have that experience. It's a VR generation. And of course, I'm sure I had 40-year-old dudes yelling at me when I was 13 playing COD because I was annoying. Just like how people get annoyed when there's some kid in their Pop 1 lobby. But the only thing I could really say is the mute button exists. Blocks exist. And if it really bothers you so bad, just don't log into Roblox. Avoid it like the plague. And really, my whole opinion here, assuming the launch goes well, is that this is a great thing for VR as a whole. Now, whether Roblox itself is an exploitative app with a really sketchy background is a rabbit hole for another day, but I think it's time for a meme break. So Apple products have this weird thing where there's a kind of status attached to it. You got the blue bubbles, fancy $1,000 stands, AirPods Max, and I don't see the Vision Pro being any different. But if you really want to flex, look no further than the peak of VR luxury. For only $39,000, you can now flex the most expensive VR headset ever made. With Caviar's custom 18-karat gold plated Vision Pro, your neck might hurt from the added weight, but the virtual clout you'll gain will offset the 3 pounds of gold. Honestly, they did add one cool feature. You get a flip up privacy lid so people can't see your eyes through the headset screen on the front. But either way, if you got the dough, you might actually have a better chance of getting one of these than the stock Pro based on the supply issues. I guess money talks. But anyways, back to the news. For a long time, people, including myself, have been eagerly awaiting any sort of news on PlayStation VR 2 getting PC support. And well, the PSVR 2 hacking efforts have made a huge huge step. After many hurdles, Ivory, the main guy working on the project, the same person who added support for the original PSVR 2, has just made a huge breakthrough. The PSVR 2 officially now works in SteamVR, at least to some extent. These are shots of Half-Life Alyx being ran on the PSVR 2 on PC. Now, the tracking hilariously was originally being done by throwing a PSVR on top of a PSVR 2, but at this point, Ivory has figured out that the tracking is done internally on the PSVR 2, so the displays are working at 120 Hz, tracking is somewhat working, and while there's still a long way to go, like controller tracking, eye tracking, and a lot more, this is a huge step. And for anyone interested, the hack is not public yet, but you should definitely go follow him if you want to figure out more. And I will say, as soon as this is in a good state, I will be making a video on it. I did want to mention that this weekend I'm having a massive collaborative VR chat community meetup and music event with PHIA from the virtual reality show. You'll get to meet us, take pictures, hang out with a bunch of people, jam to some music, and we got some special announcements from Tundra Labs and EOZ right before the music starts. So come on out, the links are down below. Man, lots of links. But now it's time for question of the week from Shifo. Palmer Lucky mentioned in a podcast last week that he dislikes going for a low-cost HMD like the Quest 2. Thoughts on this? Was the Quest 2 a market mistake? And well, this is a sticky question that I've thought about a lot. I've probably strapped about 4 videos on this exact same topic, and maybe I'll do one at a later date, because it's complicated. On one hand, the Quest 2 has allowed hundreds of developers to scale up VR game development in a way that was simply impossible before. And because of its cost, millions got into VR for the first time. On the other hand, I think a lot of people's expectations of VR didn't line up with what the Quest 2 actually offered, especially standalone, both in terms of quality and the amount or variety of content. And I think for the masses, the Quest 2 really sobered up a lot of people's ideas of modern VR. It exhausted the mysticism of what it can be because we saw how, I don't know, mid or okay it was now. Now, in an alternate universe, let's say VR stayed basically PC and console for a long time before ever making the jump to standalone and mobile. The growth would have been significantly slower, but maybe more organic and methodical. I think in general, a lot less people would be interested or even know about VR, but this would be as VR cooked, I guess, until it was really ready for mobile hardware and mobile hardware caught up. And as great as this alternate universe sounds, I don't think that the state of PCVR would really be all that different than what it is today. And I especially think that way after talking to a lot of developers that have been on the inside since 2013, for example, that know all the internal numbers. A lot of that crowd truly think and believe that VR would have died or faded into total obscurity again if it had stuck with just PC-based experiences. And when you think of it that way, the Quest was almost a bailout for a lot of the VR investments at the time. So I guess no, it's a complicated answer, but I don't think it was a mistake. And I truly believe that both can coexist and grow, and I think they're better because either exists. If Quest isn't enough for you, there's always the option of PC, and if PC's too expensive but you still want VR, you always have the option of standalone VR, and both are continuing to get better. I am pretty happy with this timeline because I think the future is really positive for the medium. And also, every time I think I have this space sort of figured out, it goes in totally unpredictable directions, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. And so yeah, that was question of the week. Make sure to leave your own down below. I may just answer yours next. Keep sending the good ones. That was awesome. And this video is getting pretty long now, so don't forget about the meetup. It's gonna be a great time. And of course, I wanna say thank you to all of my Patreon supporters, especially my Omegas. I couldn't do any of this without you. Do all the YouTube things if you wanna see more of this. And until next time, much love, Thrill out.